Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is presented by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA, and our topic for this webinar is Partnering to Reduce Energy Burden, a Michigan Community Solar and Weatherization Pilot. And we have an exciting panel lined up for you today. Before I pass it over to them, a few very quick webinar logistics. If you'd like to minimize your webinar console, you can do that by clicking on the orange arrow that you see circled in this picture on your screen. You can also click on that orange arrow to expand your webinar console. And one thing that we would love for you to do with your webinar console is to submit your questions and your comments throughout the webinar. So the format of the webinar is we've got our introductory bit here. We'll have a couple of presentations, and then we'll do moderated Q&A amongst the panelists, and then we'll answer audience questions. So it'll be sort of a two-part Q&A. So do submit your questions. We are excited to hear them, and we'll get to as many as we can. And finally, this webinar is being recorded. We'll send you a link to the webinar slides and a copy of the recording within about 48 hours or so, and those will also be posted on our website, cesa.org/webinars, which is a great website to visit if you would like to see any of our upcoming or archived webinars. So with that, I will now pass it over to my colleague, Anna Adamsson, to tell you more about CESA and to tell you more about our speakers in our webinar today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. As Sam said, this webinar is a presentation of Clean Energy States Alliance, or CESA, which is a nonprofit member organization for state energy agencies who are working together to advance clean energy. Next slide, please. We have over 30 core and affiliate members, many of which you can see on the screen here. Next slide. Today's webinar was produced under our Solar with Justice project. Under Solar with Justice, CESA is looking into how states and community-based organizations can collaborate more effectively to advance solar in marginalized and low-income communities. Solar with Justice is primarily funded by the Federal Department of Energy's Solar Energies Technologies Office, and the Nathan Cummings Foundation has also provided funding support. You can visit that link at the bottom of the screen here, cesa.org/project/solarwithjustice, to see the report that this webinar is based off of, as well as other resources that we published, case studies, reports, past webinars, etc. Next slide, please. In this webinar, we will be learning more about Michigan's Community Solar and Weatherization Pilot. That was the focus of a recently published case study. In that case study, we looked at 3 different pilot programs led by Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, as well as local community action agencies and 3 utilities. This case study is a part of a series. An earlier case study was published in May by the Energy Trust of Oregon, and in that case study, they enumerated 6 strategies that state energy agencies can employ to collaborate more effectively with community-based organizations. And my colleague Gabe also just published a case study last week, which focuses on a project in another Midwestern state, Minnesota. So be sure to check out our website, sign up for those webinars, and read those fellow case studies. Next slide, please. Without further ado, let me introduce today's speakers. First off, we have Lisa Thomas. As an engineer, Lisa Thomas serves as a technical assistant for clean energy manufacturing and renewable energy solutions. Lisa's work allows them to interface with various state agencies, private sectors, and all other stakeholders to research, analyze, develop, and manage projects and programs that support the Michigan Energy Services, Federal Department of Energy, DOE, and State Energy Program. A few of Lisa's responsibilities include administering, monitoring, and implementing complex technical grants and/or contracts for services funded through the federal DOE and State Energy Program. Moreover, Lisa manages clean renewable energy projects, programs, and grants that have meaningful adoption. For instance, Lisa oversees the different model creations for large-scale community solar energy programs within Michigan, incorporating research, analysis, and developments throughout the process. Lisa's participation in work groups, workshops, and conferences assists with furthering Michigan State Energy Office renewable energy and manufacturing plans, as well as Michigan's Climate Alliance goals. Through the Hardware C3 Accelerator Program, They administer aid to support small businesses' development and marketing of their clean technology through the product development process to increase manufacturing and technology readiness level. The main drivers of their interest to work in clean tech and renewables is for the preservation of the earth, supporting sustainable ways for energy production, and decreasing the amount of extracted resources required to make energies. This pilot, like I said, was actually repeated 3 times in Michigan, each with a utility and community action agency partner. We are lucky today to have representatives from both the first and third iterations of this pilot. We don't have anyone from the second pilot. We'll be covering that one briefly when Lisa presents, but you can learn much more by reading the case study. Miguel and Brian are both representing the third pilot, and Tammy is from the first. Miguel Rodriguez has been the Executive Director of Capital Area Community Services since January of 2018. Prior to CACS, he served as a promotions agent with the State of Michigan DNR, working with volunteers and fundraising groups associated with state parks and recreation areas. Miguel was Executive Director at the Kalamazoo County Community Action Bureau for 5 years, a department within Kalamazoo County. He served as a grant manager with the Bureau of Community Action and Economic Opportunity for 4 years, doing programmatic monitoring at community action agencies he was assigned to. He has worked for other nonprofit agencies and has worked in the education sector as well. He has a Bachelor of Arts and Master's in Public Administration from Eastern Michigan University. Tammy Haworth has 14 years of experience as an energy use advisor at Cherryland. Tammy administers the Cooperative's energy efficiency rebate program, solar programs, and performs home energy assessments. She is certified in residential and commercial energy auditing through Touchstone Energy and has a level 1 infrared technology certification through Snell Group. Tammy holds a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration. And last but certainly not least, we have Brian Shu. He is a Residential Renewable Energy Associate Program Manager for Consumers Energy. Brian has been with the company for nearly 6 years, and their primary responsibilities include providing daily support and helping manage the Solar Gardens program. They're an avid supporter of renewable energy and was themselves a Solar Garden subscriber at one time. When Brian's not working, they enjoy traveling and trying different restaurants with their girlfriend. Some of Brian's hobbies include working out, shooting pool, and collecting vintage comic books, So just a reminder to everyone before we get started to please start submitting questions into the question box as soon as you think of them. We'll be having that open Q&A at the end of this webinar. And I will go ahead and pass the virtual microphone over to Lisa, who will be introducing the Community Solar and Weatherization pilot and overviewing it today.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Thomas, as mentioned, with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy in the Energy Services team, formerly known as the Michigan Energy Office. Trying to click the next slide here.
Time, one more click.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. So the Michigan Solar Communities Low to Moderate Income Access Program began as an accelerator with the U.S. Department of Energy. Through the accelerator, we were provided funds to create a community program that would provide renewable energy access to low-income customers and potentially address low-income energy challenges by developing locally designed energy efficiency and renewable energy solutions. The first few phases were to focus on each of Michigan's electric utility type, meaning an electric cooperative, municipality, and investor-owned utility, which would allow for a beginning step in providing a platform for all communities to start implementing solar energy access within their communities. We wanted this program to be a successful program and to continue to find ways to provide access to renewable energy, as well as address low-income energy burden and challenges. In order to achieve this goal and program data, partnerships were developed during the initial stage of each phase, there were a lot of stakeholder meetings and conversations between the state government and local energy service providers. The Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy led the discussions between partners and assisted in any additional work when necessary and needed. The local community action agency and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services assisted with identifying households that were eligible to participate and assisted with subscribers receiving weatherization. And then we also had the host, which is the local electric utility. In addition to the weatherization, the local electric utility provider is the solar energy program host that allows the subscribers to receive the solar credits. And the U.S. Department of Energy and the Michigan Public Service Commission were part of the conversations that helped bridge and figure out the best way to get the program started. We are thankful for having great partners and being able to create a sustainable, value-added programs and services in Michigan that are utility or energy related. Okay, after collaborating and partnering, too far. Sam, could you go back?
Sure, are we on the right one now?
Yes. After collaborating and partnering, we were able to create our first phase 1 project in the Cherryland Electric Cooperative, phase 2 in the Village of Lawrence territory, and phase 3 in the Consumers Energy territory, specifically within the local community action agency in the Capital Area Community Services territory. Now, the partnerships for phase 1, 2, and 3 are between the state government and the local energy service providers. I would like to use the term shared solar when describing these Celica community solar projects. Shared solar means a group subscription-based solar project that provides electricity bill credits to subscribers. I have adopted this term from the report named Solar with Justice, Strategies for Powering Up Under-Resourced Communities and Growing an Inclusive Solar Market, which was through CISA. So with all 3 phases, there is a large shared solar array located somewhere within the electric utility territory. The low-income subscribers can participate and enroll into the program so long as they qualify for weatherization within their local community action agency. For phase 1, within the Cherryland Electric Cooperative territory, the subscribers enrolled in the program had to fall 200% and below the federal poverty line and had received weatherization. Each subscriber received 9 panels, which averaged about $29 per month in solar credits. For phase 2, within the Village of Lawrence territory, priority was given to the subscribers of the program that fell at or below 200% and had been weatherized. Each subscriber enrolled participate in the on-bill finance program that allows subscribers to choose to receive up to 10 solar panels, which average about $23 per month in solar credits. Energy Services and the subscriber contributed to the panels on-bill fee of about 90 cents per panel per month. For phase 3, within the Consumers Energy and Capital Area Community Services territory, is the most recently added program, which is currently in the process of identifying and onboarding households. The subscribers enrolled are newly weatherized, both gas and electric consumer energy customers, and are income qualified. Next slide, please. Some of the measures that we are following and tracking are, the average electricity cost prior to and after weatherization services, as well as the average electricity usage prior to and after enrollment into the community solar program. Some of the highlights from the Cherryland project were, after analyzing the survey data and electricity data, There was about a 10% late payment decrease as displayed in the pie graph. Some households completed additional home repairs and bought food with their additional utility bill savings. And some also commented saying that they saw warmer and healthier home temperatures during those winter months. I would like to also mention that the subscribers' benefits were receiving weatherization, access to solar energy, and began a step towards energy self-sufficiency. Next slide, please. We wanted to build upon from what we learned and successes from phase 1 to phase 2 and so on. The advantages and success stories that we had were the partners' willingness to participate, which allowed for us to reach the project goals. We were able to complete the accelerator and produce several phase projects that not only provided access to renewable energy, but also addressed the low-income energy burden and cost of weatherization. Some of the lessons learned were understanding and making sense of the data. In order to do this, all partners were willing to contribute, providing the information and having meetings to discuss these things. For instance, during phase 1, we did not have a strong foundational understanding how our subscribers felt and having information to improve on our services with this particular. To combat this, our solution was creating a survey, and as the program continued to grow, we would improve upon the survey. Lastly, there was no structure in place for income verification. Thankfully, we had assistance with our partners to figure out and implement a smooth process of income verification to make sure subscribers enrolled are income qualified over the years. The next steps that Energy Services are working on is developing a model template for other communities to replicate and have access to, which is us updating our Michigan Solar Communities Guidebook. We have a grant with the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association to complete this guidebook. And then lastly, identifying sustainable funding resources outside of EGLE grants for shared solar community solar projects. And lastly, we also participate in work groups such as CISA and the National Community Solar Partnership to find ways to have best practices to working with other communities to replicate similar solar models. Next slide. And then lastly, I would like to mention other related energy services, renewable energy programs. We have the Catalyst Communities programs, which provides a range of resource options to meet communities wherever they are. Some of these resources are energy efficiency upgrades and renewable energy. Usually there are webinars occurring that you may register for. If you miss a webinar, you can also see some of these recorded webinar lists in series on our webpage. We also have the Michigan Zoning Database, which is a free database that catalogs Michigan's municipal zoning ordinances and identifies those that reference renewable energy. And then lastly, we have the Michigan Clean Energy Assets Roadmap, which is a roadmap for clean energy technology development, solar, wind, and geothermal energy sectors, intended to quantify each sector and identify, evaluate, and find detailed opportunities to significantly accelerate sector growth in Michigan. Next slide. Thank you to everyone for joining today's conversation. And that is my contact information if you need further information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Virtual round of applause to you. Next up is Miguel Rodriguez from Capital Area Community Services.
Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize due to technical difficulties. I can't get my photo up on the camera, but you're not missing too much. So let's just go ahead and continue on with the presentation. So let's start with the first slide. So to give you a little bit about community action agencies, we are actually part of a national movement established in 1964 as part of President Johnson's War on Poverty. Our specific community action agency serves Eden, Ingham, Eaton, and Shiawassee counties, which basically is the Lansing area. We are a 501c3 private nonprofit agency governed by a 27-member board of directors. We receive weatherization program funding. It comes to CACS from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, the Bureau of Community Action and Economic Opportunity. Funds to purchase the solar panel subscriptions came from the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which is the organization that Lisa represents. Next panel, please. Very quickly, our mission and our vision statements. Really, in summary, all CAAs across the country are probably going to have some type of similar mission and vision, which really we are all trying to address issues to help people overcome poverty and address any issues that may be facing them. So there's our mission and vision statement. Next slide, please. These are some of the services we have. Weatherization, of course. Weatherization is meant to, and I'll describe that process. The idea with weatherization is to perform various measures within a person's home so that the end result is that they save money on their utility bill. We also offer Head Start and Early Head Start programs for children from 0 to 5. We have 2 different food programs, one for seniors and one for low-income individuals. We have a financial literacy program that's tied to our property tax foreclosure assistance program, and as the name implies, the idea is to help individuals who are in danger of losing their home. We have a very extensive information referral program, and we have a utility and housing assistance program. I pride our agency on the fact that many individuals and other agencies do call our various service centers to ask for, do we have certain types of services or what agencies they can call to get additional assistance. I noticed how many people are on the call. I'm assuming there are some other community action agencies. It will really vary on the number and type of services that community action agencies across the nation offer, depending on the size of the agency, their funding source, and the role of the community. We are a private nonprofit. However, you do have some community action agencies that may be affiliated with their county government, city government, etc. Next slide, please. Our role. A funny story is Bob Nelson was the president of our board. He calls me up one day and he says, Miguel, we've got an interesting program I think we need to get involved in. That led to a couple meetings. Typically what happens in our agency when we get new services or programs, we talk about it amongst our staff. We take it to our board and then we give the go-ahead. This is kind of one where kind of our board president had kind of put our agency up. At the time he knew, I believe it's Bob Johnson who worked with EGLE, a high-ranking official there. I think he's still there. And that's how we got involved. I think as Lisa mentioned, a group was formed to discuss the project and how best to implement it. And again, acknowledging some various partners. You've got EGLE, the University of Michigan, the Bureau of Community Action and Economic Opportunity, and of course, Consumers Energy. I know Brian's going to talk later. Next slide, please. Resources and capacity we devoted to the project. Our Stability Services Director, Pam Elise, coordinated the budgeting program that would be used for clients participating in the program. Not only do clients get a little bit of that when they initially sign up through weatherization, but they also have the opportunity to participate in other financial literacy and budgeting related programs. Our weatherization staff, they identified homes that were eligible to participate in the program. The one thing that I will note, which is again something I'll talk about later, here in Lansing, the Board of Water and Light is the municipal utility. So for this program, we actually had to serve clients who were served by Consumers Energy, both for natural gas as for electricity. So initially that presented some challenges because yes, we had numerous clients that we were serving in weatherization that were BWL clients, but were not Consumers Energy clients. Upon verification of a client's eligibility, our weatherization director, Bob Liss, would upload the client into a shared partner database that all of our partners had access to. From there, the client would be assigned a solar panel subscription. Carl, who was acknowledged, I believe, in the report, would basically follow up with the homeowner to do the academic part of the project, and I'm assuming they'll touch base on that later. We would then, once we sign the homeowner up for a subscription, we would then receive an invoice from Consumers Energy, and then we would go ahead and then pay for the subscription. So there was no charge to the client. Next slide, please. Very quickly, our weatherization process, as I said, this is going to be very similar to other community action agencies. We identify where a client indicates an interest in the weatherization program. A pre-inspection is done on the home to determine what measures can be done, as well if the client is income eligible. We look at the savings to investment ratio. I put in there ROI, but it's actually savings to investment ratio. A lot of folks going in and putting windows and some of those things are the most energy efficient measures. Actually, things like insulation, repairing cracks in the foundation, those type of things actually are the most energy efficient. Contractors will go out and perform various energy measures. A post-inspection on the work is done on the home. We have both our staff that go and do the inspection as well as the homeowner needing to sign off that the work is done. The contractor will then submit their invoices for payment, and then we will include those homes as a completed weatherization unit. As far as, next slide, please. As far as lessons learned and recommendation, one, secure agreements and know when payments will be received. As many of you know, and I'm sure we'll get a chuckle out of it, is when you're working with government agencies, things always don't move as fast as you expect them to. So we had signed on for the program, began to gear up, but of course we needed to wait to actually have the signed agreement. So I think as some of you community action agencies and government agencies maybe look to get together, make sure you get those contracts in order. Give yourself some time so that way you can get the process going, but when you actually start enrolling clients and getting them subscribed, make sure you allow for enough time for that paperwork to get done and processed. Make sure all partners are clear on their responsibilities on how the weatherization process works. One of the hiccups we had is initially we wanted all of the homes to be weatherized first. So the weatherization process does take some time. So of course at the beginning when we would get together and report on numbers, enrolling and subscribing clients to the program was going slow. We had a discussion. We decided that once a client was determined as eligible, whether we had done the weatherization services or not, we could go ahead and enroll them in the program. So that's something you want to go ahead and discuss. Account for some amount of administrative cost. All the funding that we get from EGLE, all of it is used to pay for the subscriptions. So the work that Pam or Bob or myself or that board members would contribute to the project, you know, we had other funding that basically covered those efforts in that time. But that is, again, something that as we move forward, and again, depending on the size of your agency and what your capacity is, you may be able to do that. But I know sometimes when you've got multiple programs and projects, you know, time is stretched. Use materials that have already been developed from existing programs, flyers, program information. Definitely there's a lot of things that have been created already. Why recreate the wheel? And then again, making connections to community action agencies. As I said, just about every county is serviced by a community action agency. The one thing I'll point out is that right now we are all ramping up for additional weatherization services that we need to provide because of additional funding at the federal level. We basically have done this because we do want to be recognized as a leader in this area. Who knows what potentially may come down the road. Also, this allowed us to strengthen our relationship with Consumers Energy, not only with this program, we're also looking at potential relationships with BWL, Board of Water and Light. But again, those are some of the long range things that we're looking at. Next slide, please. And finally, you have my contact information. Again, I do want to commend the report that was presented at the beginning. That went into more detail than I could go, but again, I do want to, again, commend the folks. A lot of detail, a lot of information. So again, whether it's information I presented here or information in the report, either I or Pam or Bob will certainly be willing to share that information. So on that note, I will turn it back over to the moderator. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miguel. Another virtual round of applause. I'm going to invite both Tammy and Brian now to turn on their cameras. We have a set of predetermined questions that I'm going to ask them, and then once we're through with those, we'll open it up to the audience Q&A. We've got some really good ones in here that I've earmarked to shout out once we get to the Q&A, but please feel free to continue submitting more questions. Awesome. Thank you both, Brian and Tammy. These are the two utilities that participated in this pilot program. Tammy of Cherryland Electric Cooperative led the first pilot, and Brian of Consumers Energy led the third pilot. Lawns Municipal was not able to make it for today's webinar. First off to Tammy, I'm just curious what initially motivated Cherryland's interest in participating in this pilot.
One of the things was it was a unique opportunity for us to get out to our low-income members and serve them in a very unique way. So we're always looking for those opportunities, and it helps them become more energy efficient, because we know that the majority of our low-income members are some of the highest users of electricity. So having that fold into the weatherization, then giving them the credit on there, and just helps reduce their financial burden. So it was just a great fit for us. It's part of our makeup as a cooperative, and so we thought it was just the right thing to do.
Awesome. Same question to you, Brian, then. What motivates Consumers Energy in participating?
Consumers Energy was motivated to participate in the pilot for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it was a great opportunity to help low-income customers who may have encountered financial hardships and were struggling to keep up with their bills. This aligns with the 3 Ps of the company, which include people, planet, and prosperity. As a utility, Consumers Energy understands the importance of doing what we can to best serve our customers and leaving the planet better than we found it. Participating in the pilot allowed the company to take another step towards accomplishing those objectives. The other motivation for participating was more straightforward. Prior to meeting with CACS to discuss the idea of a pilot program, Consumers Energy was ordered by the MPSC to report its efforts to gauge the interest of low-income customers in participating in the voluntary green pricing program, as well as our plans to accommodate low-income customers. So suffice to say, participating in the pilot was a no-brainer, as it fit the company's initiative of developing a new VGP offering for low-income customers, while also ensuring that the company would remain compliant with the MPSC.
Awesome. So when you both joined the program, I just want to get into more what your roles were as a part of this pilot. And I know it was previewed in Miguel's presentations, but Tammy, for Cherryland, what was Cherryland's roles?
Besides being in the very beginning of the discussions of what it would look like, what would be the number of members that we are going to reach out to and impact, was helping facilitate that interaction with the members, speaking to them about the program, engaging with them about their concerns, reassuring them that it is not a financial burden on them, that they're not signing up for any costs. So we really wanted to just be good stewards to them. So our role was basically, I went out and met with every member, explained the program, spent about a half hour to an hour, had them sign the consent and release form, acknowledging what we are going to be sharing with the entities, the partnerships, and also what they can expect from us. Then we also did an assessment at their home, worked with them if they had any other energy efficiency questions, concerns, directing them in different resources. And then we also set up each account to make sure that they got the ongoing credit. So that was part of our role, and started doing the data tracking. So we also started tracking what their usage was prior to the weatherization, prior to their sign up. So we had some benchmarking to do, and that's where we started that process.
Awesome. And I'm going to stay with you for a minute, Tammy. So Cherryland had already established, in fact, the state's first community solar array back in 2013. What
Correct.
capacity and resources did Cherryland need to devote to first creating that community solar program before this pilot was ever in discussion?
That was actually a unique partnership. We actually partnered with our municipal. And because we have a site that has a lot of land in front of our office, we were able to site it right here at the Cooperative's headquarters. And so we had a lot of discussions with a local solar contractor who's very familiar with the zoning in our area, the regulations, and, siting of that. So it was a lot of grassroots efforts on our behalf, speaking with our membership. Did they have an appetite for it? Did they want that? What were they looking for to get out of this? And so there was a lot of time and devotion by our staff, the Traverse Light and Power Municipal that was involved in that to get that going. And so that was where we started on that. And it's been flourishing, and we were able to have it fully subscribed within 6 months of operations. So it was a great success story right from the get-go.
Yeah, and expanding too.
Yeah.
So when you had entered into this pilot, what sort of resources did you all had to commit to create this new kind of bucket for the low-income folks that you're enrolling in this pilot?
The low-income bucket, it was mainly just the resources. We did do some funding on that, which we had available. So it was more developing what did they want from that and understanding how we could give back to them members, the low-income society, and providing brochures and communications out there. So it was more of a technical aspect of that and some financial aspects.
Super. Now turning back over to Brian and Consumers Energy, could you kind of sum up some of the broad roles that Consumers Energy had in the pilot?
So Consumers Energy role within the pilot focused primarily on administering the program. This entailed managing the enrollment process, as well as implementing the billing and ensuring that participants were receiving bill credits monthly. In addition, Consumers Energy was also responsible for providing any marketing materials that they developed to assist capital area community services with their customer outreach, which they were responsible for.
And like Cherryland, Consumers Energy already had established a community solar program prior to this pilot called Solar Gardens. How was this pilot integrated into Consumers Energy's existing community solar program?
So in order to accommodate the pilot, a new offering called Sunrise was developed. Sunrise is a subset of Solar Gardens that has different guidelines and terms and conditions for participating in it. It does much differently from Solar Gardens apart from the eligibility requirements and how it is billed. This made integrating the pilot easier, as much of the groundwork for implementing the new offering had already been done. There just had to be some tweaks made to the enrollment and billing processes to enable the program to function properly.
And then more broadly speaking, what were this primary steps that Consumers Energy had to take to launch the pilot?
So there were numerous steps Consumers Energy had to take to launch the pilot. The first was to test the concept of the program with customers via a customer survey panel. The results of the survey were very positive, which gave the company the confidence to meet with key stakeholders such as CACS and EGLE to share and vet the concept further. From there, Consumers Energy did an ex parte filing to propose a new offering, which the MPSC approved. After that, the agreement between the parties who are participating in the pilot was drafted and approved. And then lastly, tweaks were made to the enrollment and billing processes to ensure the program could be properly implemented. In terms of the timeline, it took approximately 2.5 years to launch the program from the time the survey panels were first conducted until the agreement was signed and the program was ready to launch.
Perfect. And lastly, do you have any lessons learned or recommendations that you'd like to share?
In terms of lessons learned from our experience with the pilot, I think the biggest one would be centered around billing. Even though the billing infrastructure had been established for solar gardens, there were subtle differences between the pilot that made it somewhat of a challenge. With solar gardens, participants see two line items on their bill, one for the subscription fee and another for the credits they receive for the energy produced by their subscription. However, with Sunrise, those line items are split between two bills, one that goes to the nonprofit who's responsible for paying the subscription fee, and another that goes to the low-income participant who receives the energy credit. Having to split out the billing in that way required manual process, which made the billing more cumbersome and added to the administrative burden for the program. Fortunately, the number of Sunrise participants were relatively low. Otherwise, it could have been a problem. With that in mind, we recently implemented a new automated billing solution that will make the billing much easier going forward. So it was a good lesson learned, and one that luckily didn't end up costing the company.
Gosh, yes, good to know, good to know. And same question to you then, Tammy. Do you have any lessons learned or recommendations that you'd like to share?
Some of the lessons learned was establishing what the member can expect and making sure you have some clear communication and marketing materials so that it can be shared with. Also, income verification, who is going to be responsible for that? When is it going to be renewed? You know, how frequently do you have to do that income verification? Because our subscriptions are for 15 years that they will receive that credit. So how frequently are we going to be doing that? And if we do have a member that does move away or unfortunately passes on, how do we fill that spot? So what is the process? How do we keep an ongoing list? And who is going to be the point of contact to enroll them? Are we going to reach out to the community action agency? Do we maintain a list? And so that is getting that established as to filling those holes is key, because there are times when all of a sudden you have one or two come up very unexpectedly, or you find out that a member is going to be moving away and you have a little bit more of advance notice to make that communication out there that you need a spot to fill.
Okay, super. And then I want to give both of you a chance. We'll start with Brian. If you want to share any other equity-driven projects that Consumers Energy has been involved in or is planning to jump into soon.
I don't have anything I can share currently, but Consumers Energy will be filing a biennial report with the MPSC later this fall. Among other things, that report is used to introduce and propose new programs to the MPSC that the utility would like to see come to fruition. The report we file can be accessed online by going to the Michigan Public Service Commission's electronic docket filing system. For anyone that's interested in seeing what we're proposing, the report is being filed and will be accessible on September 22nd.
And then same question to you, Tammy. I know that, in fact, the Cherryland subscription had started at 50, and I believe it's now expanded to 60. So that's one development since the pilot first began. But would you like to share anything else that's happened or that you all are working on?
Absolutely. We did actually get requests from a local energy group called Leelanau Energy, and they were proposing a grant to one of the townships in their area to use ARPA funds, and they were successful in their grant to receive funds for 10 low-income members within this township to receive solar credits. So it is a unique opportunity, similar to like what we're doing with EGLE. We're working directly with a township that has members that have gone through the Community Action Agency's Weatherization program. The township, through their ARPA funds, are paying that community solar subscription for these members, and each one of these members gets 10 panel subscriptions for the 15 years. So that is something that just started at the beginning of the year. We've got 2 enrolled. We have the third one that is waiting to get their assessment done. As soon as that assessment's done, they will get enrolled and start receiving that credit. on their account. So we have a few more shares to fill, but we're hoping and excited to get those filled shortly.
Great. Well, that lines up our moderated, pre-planned discussion. We have a whole bunch of questions coming in from the audience. I'll invite Lisa and Miguel, or Lisa, if you want to turn on your camera, Miguel, if you want to be ready to unmute, because I'll start answering or asking rather the audience questions. I do just want to preface this by saying we didn't concentrate too much on the nitty-gritty numbers, like the size of panels and how many panels each household got and what the savings were. All of that information you can find in the case study. We'll try to cover as much of it as we can in the Q&A section, but if we don't get to your question, know that most of these questions are answered in the report itself. So let me start off with a question for Lisa, asking whether the participating households are homeowners or if they can also be renters.
Yeah, typically within the program, they can be either or, as long as they sign up for the weatherization program with their local community action agency, that essentially determines who qualifies for the program.
Great, and then a follow-up question to that, are multifamily buildings eligible, renters, owners, whatever, that folks who are residing in multifamily homes? Is that the same answer?
No, so Silica focus on single family households, not multifamily. Yeah, so right now the program is only open to single family households. And within that, I know within the local community action agency, they have their criteria of what qualifies as a single family household, which can be like duplexes or ranch homes and stuff like that.
Okay, super. And kind of building off of it, but shifting gears to Tammy, or rather actually Miguel, and how you were able to assess low income eligibility for these programs. Could you say more about how you determined that, whether it was a self-attestation or if you used other metrics? And I will say to everyone that it was households had to be at or under 200% of the federal poverty level. I know in case that was a part of the question as well. But go ahead, Miguel.
And Anna, you kind of addressed that. Basically, what happens when the individual calls our office and speaks to Rosemary or someone in our office, they will share what they need to bring. They will need to show the income in terms of how we make that determination. And then from there, if they meet those guidelines that you just mentioned, Anna, they would be deemed eligible for the program. If they were over income, we'd still offer other type of services that a person might want to avail themselves to. But yes, that is determined at the initial outset, and that information is put in the files for documentation purposes. So when we undergo monitoring, they verify that the clients are eligible for the program.
Great. And do you reassess eligibility at a certain benchmark throughout the program?
And again, I know Bob's on this call, so if I get it wrong, he can put the notes. I believe once we do the inspection within a year, ideally we need to wrap up and weatherize the home. In the event that the home is still not completed, we would have to go back in and look and do an assessment. But yes, most of our homes we try to do within a certain time frame.
Okay, great. Next question is for Tammy. How big was the array, or how many kilowatts was the solar that was set aside for the first pilot?
The first pilot was for 540 shares. So yeah, each member got 9 panels.
Okay, super. And they got 9 panels, and then those savings were represented on their electricity bill, right, on a credit?
Right. So it did vary because it was based on the solar production. So the winter credit was lower than the summer credit. And so we explained that to the members that it will be fluctuating on a monthly basis, but on an average, they were receiving about $360 a year as a solar credit.
Okay, super. That does bring up a question. little earlier on the list. They wanted to exactly what you were saying, kind of dig into what the savings were for households and what percentage of their bill they could expect to save by participating in this program. So they had mentioned in Washington, D.C., their community solar and deep retrofit program averaged about 50% utility bill reductions. Do either of you happen to know percentage-wise an estimate on that off the top of your head?
I don't have the exact percentage, but on an average, most of our members had a yearly expenditure of about $1,400 for their electric bill. And so getting $360 off of that is what they were averaging on a yearly basis.
Okay, super. And I'll add too, I think NMCAA, Northwest Community Action Agency, also weren't able to be on today's call, but I believe they had estimated about 40% savings from the weatherization and 30% from community solar. But please fact check me in the actual case study or reach out to NMCAA, I guess. But I believe those are the figures, at least for pilot one at the start.
And if I can quickly add to that, in addition to those monetary savings, what we find a lot of times when the clients come in and talk about weatherization service, they're able to learn about all the other services that CACS provides. As I mentioned, Pam Elise, our Stability and Services Director, she oversees the various programs. We can also refer people over to Head Start, our food program. So it's not just a matter of looking at just the monetary savings they're going to get on their utility bill. It's the access to other services they may not have known about that they're now able to be eligible for, and in most instances they will be income eligible. Just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you. We find a good next question to go off of. One person had a question about how the utility bills, in Lisa's slides, I think that you broke it down by each pilot section, and in the second pilot, which we didn't really cover much, the low-income residents did have to pay for their subscription, but the credit that they got from the solar panels covered their entire cost of the subscription, so they've had to pay nothing out of pocket, at least to the date that I had checked with the Lawns municipal utility. In these other two programs at Cherryland and Consumers Energy, they have their own community solar programs that you can enroll in and pay a subscription fee for, but the low-income residents that are enrolled in this program do not pay any fee. It's covered by the costs, by the folks participating in this program through the Celica grant, through Cherryland, through EGLE. Did I get that? I saw some head nods, but would any of you like to add on to that?
Yeah, that's correct. And I guess with the phase 2 program, with the bill financing, we did put language in there and let the subscribers know, like if there's a bad day where the solar panels isn't making enough production, then they may have to, pay out of pocket for it. But yeah, so far we haven't seen any issues like that come up, so they don't have to pay out of pocket outside of their solar credits.
Okay, great. Sticking to the same topic of this webinar, but changing gears again, someone asked what happens at the close of the program. Just to clarify, it's a community solar program, so the solar arrays are at one field site, not on the actual residence's roof. So there's they don't have to take off solar panels from the roofs because they were never there to begin with. There's really good explainers on community solar if you all are interested on the Department of Energy federal website or just Googling it. But could one of you all kind of go through what plans are at the end of this program for the folks that are participating? At the end of that 15-year or however long subscription mark?
Sure, I can start off. I don't think we've planned so far for the end of the term, But as far as like what would happen to the solar panels, of course, that would be up to our electric utility providers to figure out, you know, how to discard of it or update it and stuff like that. And then too, in the meantime, I don't think we also mentioned with our phase 3 with consumers energy, that is like a 3-year program. So once the households are enrolled in that program, they basically get 3 years of solar credit subscriptions. And then we offload them, and then CACS finds additional subscribers to enroll for an additional 3 years. So I figured that would probably still be ongoing, but I'll let the electric providers kind of speak on like how they foresee the future of the program.
Well, the Solar Gardens program itself is a pilot program that was expected to go 25 years. And so when the nonprofit, in this case CACS, when they use the grant funding from EGLE to pay for those subscriptions on behalf of the low-income customers, they're subscribing to the program for the remaining life of the program, which again is expected to be 25 years unless we make any changes. And so it's at the discretion, after 3 years, it's at the discretion, as Lisa said, of the nonprofit to rotate those credits that the low-income customers receive to other low-income households if they choose. Otherwise, it could potentially stick with the current households for longer than 3 years. But they want to try to give as many low-income households an opportunity to benefit from the program as they can, which is why they look into doing that every 3 years or so.
Okay, this next question is coming from someone who had worked as an energy program director with a CAA for over 40 years. This question it starts by saying, these subscription-based programs seem to me like a lottery where the population at large, especially non-participant low and moderate income families, subsidize a benefit for a few. They ask, why not set up a system where the Community Action Agency or another nonprofit holds the financial benefits of adding the solar to the grid and then distributes those benefits equitably to its entire client population? That would also eliminate the substantial expense of marketing and maintaining the subscriber base. Would any of you like to comment on that and whether that had come into what you had thought about when developing this program or not?
Sure, I guess I can comment. I guess within the state of Michigan ecosystem and how everything operates, I guess this was the best way that we could find suitable to collaborate against partners. And since we kind of have like a public service commission and different utility types, each program is a little different. And I think within our second pilot with the Village of Lawrence, which is a municipal owned utility, I think they were able to kind of streamline that services a little bit better. All they did was pretty much work with the weatherization team or their local community action agency to provide those weatherization services. But pretty much everything else was pretty much done through the Village of Lawrence. So I guess through that utility company, we were able to kind of see a smooth process as far as onboarding and reaching out and communicating with the subscribers and community. But yeah, we were trying to work on that with like phase 3 with consumers energy, kind of smoothing out that process. And then also the other thing is finding the funding source for the households. And so that's also why I guess, you know, my team comes into play to help find the funding for low income customers to onboard into the program. And then also what makes our program unique is we try to include the weatherization aspect as well as find the low income customers. So smoothing out that process and making it easy to find those customers without using too many people, because I don't think like so much energy or Cherryland really has that information of like which of their members have or are low income, because I guess that is kind of, private information. So, we tried our best to try to streamline the processes as best we could.
That's great. And then one last question, probably more directed towards Tammy and Brian. Did you all see any positive impacts on grid resilience or reliability as a result of these pilot programs, or more broadly, your community solar programs?
As far as grid resiliency, we have not, because the community solar, the large arrays are not located right on our service grid. They're part of our G&T's facilities, so it is not directly impacting our specific members in that, more as a whole for the entire cooperative group throughout Michigan.
Great. And there's just one last question that came in. Who actually owns the solar array and pays for maintenance and repairs? Tammy or Brian, want to answer that one real quick?
So for Solar Gardens, we as Consumers Energy, we as the utility, we're responsible for owning, operating, and maintaining those solar facilities.
Perfect. And then the subscribers, they are leasing panels from the program and receiving the bill credits.
They're subscribing to the energy generated by those facilities and receiving the energy credits for their subscription.
Perfect. Sounds good. Sounds good.
And
Thank
that's
you
the same
all.
for us.
Okay, super. Thank you all so much for joining today's webinar and even staying with us 2 or 3 minutes over time. I'll go ahead and pass it back to Sam, but first, just thank you all so much for joining today's webinar. Panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. And please go ahead and check out the report with follow-up questions. I'll also be looking through the Q&A list and picking out some that we didn't answer and hopefully responding to you all within a week as well. But over to Sam.
Thanks, Anna, and thank you so much to everyone who attended. Thank you to our panelists. That was fantastic. Before you go, I just wanted to let everyone know about some webinars that we have coming up. We have one tomorrow on resilient power for Florida community health centers. That should be really interesting. I would definitely recommend that people attend. I'm excited for that. 2 others later in July listed on your screen, one with Berkeley Lab on their 2023 review of US state renewable portfolio and clean energy standards. And then finally, we have another webinar in this series on July 27th, Community Solar plus Resilience Hub in Duluth, Minnesota. So find information about all of that on our website, cisa.org/webinars. We'll put it in a follow-up email to you along with the webinar slides and recording. And thanks again. This was great, and we'll hope to see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.